Well, good morning. It's good to be with you again today. We've just come off of a few days of vacation when we did a lot of walking on some really lovely hiking trails close by. If you get a chance to get out, I highly recommend it. It helps put the pressures of the day away, and it can be very educational. Like when we walked up to an overlook and found the slope that we thought was just mild, turned out to be a little more challenging than we'd expected, at least for people of a certain age. So, very educational. Now let's talk about love. We are hardwired for love. That is the way God made us. I learned in anthropology courses a long time ago. In fact, I went back to look and make sure that this hasn't changed, that this is still our understanding, because this information I picked up in the last millennium after all. But animals who have their needs met, but who were not shown love, they failed to thrive. And the same holds for us. We need to be loved. We need to love. It's the way we're made. It's the way God made us. So we're going to look at some comic book superheroes called the Star Sapphires, and we're going to look at Paul's letter to the Corinthians, and we're going to see how both the Corinthians and the Star Sapphires learned the hard way what love is and what it isn't. And we're going to try to benefit from their mistakes and see where love leads us and what love requires of us. Entering into the comic book world, Hal Jordan was the Green Lantern, as some of you will know. And he had a love interest named Carol Ferris. And she is recruited amongst the Star Sapphires. And she takes that name for herself. And Star Sapphires, well, they wore violet rings that channeled the power of love. The Star Sapphires declared that they served the cause of love. And they believed that only love could save the universe. And the Green Lantern discovers, however, that the Star Sapphires aren't all they seem to be. And this is before Carol Ferris's perspective on love changes the way they do things. You see, the Star Sapphires were women who were enslaving men and draining them of their love so that they could power those violet rings. And they want Carol to control Hal and to bring him to their home planet and keep him there. Keep him away from defending the galaxy because he's doing it in a different way. And Carol's response to the Queen of the Star Sapphires changes their perspective. She gives her perspective on love, and she says to the Queen, "Oh, honey." How many people have said to a queen, "Oh, honey"? I'd like to know. "Oh, honey, that's not love, that's selfishness. Real love is sacrifice. Real love is putting another's needs before our own, doing what's best for the person we love." And the Star Sapphire Queen is shocked by this. It rocks her to her core, and she admits that they didn't understand love at all. It's a modern parable about power and the necessity of love, a parable for our times, to understand in a way that we can get it. It reminds us that we all need love, that we want to be loved, and we want to give love. There have been songs, letters, prayers, poems, and endless sermons written about love. Paul dealt with it when he wrote to the Corinthians. Both Carol, when she spoke to the Star Sapphires, and Paul, when he speaks to the feuding Corinthians. Corinthians who are angry with each other because they're disputing which of the fruit of the Spirit is the best. And of course they're claiming that the fruit of the Spirit that they feel they have personally is the best one. And so they're fighting each other, they're getting very angry with each other about the fruit of the Spirit. And so Paul writes to them to correct them And he tells his readers and his hearers that true love is patient, true love is kind, it's never rude, and it's not easily angered. Now, the Star Sapphires came from a common race, half of which they split off from, who declared that they would never have emotions as part of their lives at all, kind of like Vulcans in Star Trek. And the Star Sapphires claimed that this was blasphemy. They said life without love is blasphemy. Love is prominent in all of our hearts, both those in the comic book characters and in our own. We won't thrive without love. In fact, psychologists claim we're suffering right now from a deficiency. We are contact deprived, they say. We're missing human contact, human embrace because of the pandemic. We're missing human touch. We're missing love. Paul states that it doesn't matter if you can speak all the languages of earth and the languages of angels. If you can prophesy all day long, if you understand God's secret plans and you have all knowledge. And let me make an aside here. When I was a freshman in college at Ball State University and I went through the massive Bracken Library getting ready to get books to do some research, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful if I just could absorb all the knowledge of all these books and not have to read anymore? And that's when I came across the books on how to perform autopsies and decided maybe that wasn't such a good idea after all. So, but getting back to the story here. So, you can have all those things, but if you don't have love, it's all useless. Nothing can be done without love. All else fades in comparison with love. Jesus commands his followers, doesn't suggest, doesn't ask, but commands them to love their neighbors and to love their enemies. That is a command for us as well. Love God, love people. Jesus insists on it. And Jesus knew his stuff, right? Still does. In the Last Supper discussion, Jesus raises love 32 times. So obviously it's important to him in this very last discussion he's going to have with his disciples before he dies. And he ends that conversation with this: as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Love was Jesus' top priority, just as it was the Star Sapphires. And it must be ours as well. As one pastor declared, life is all about who you love and who loves you in return. Whatever else we achieve in life, it pales in comparison with how we love and how we have been loved. Paul uses his passage to break the Corinthians, to shake them out of their anger for one another, to stop their mindless one-upsmanship, to end their grudges, and get them busy at the hard work of love. The hard work of love. To use it as a practical power to unite them, to bind the church together, to pull out the people from their argumentative selves, and to place their emphasis on helping others instead. To set aside their quarrels, their feuds, their grudges, and to love instead. To give them a better way to spend their time. How much we need this right now. To understand this essential nature of love. Love gives meaning to any spiritual gifts that we have, to the sacrifices that we make. And we wouldn't have it any other way. All the conflicts in Corinth had been loveless grappling with one another. creating power struggles, confusion, and a loveless spirituality we need to avoid. Love removed the conflict, the competition that was tearing that church community apart. Returning to the comics, when Carol Ferris explains what real love is to the Star Sapphires, the Queen releases the enslaved men and stated that they had a distorted view of love. The Corinthians had a similar view of love, distorted, torn out of shape. Many times we fall for that same error today. It's visible in the media all around us and in all walks of life, a distorted, twisted view of love. Paul describes what love is and what it isn't. It's something to strive for, but it's hard to attain. Let's look at that. Love is patient, love is kind, love is never envious or boastful, it's not proud, it doesn't dishonor other people. It never is self-seeking, it's not aroused to anger easily, it doesn't hold grudges, it doesn't keep a record of what wrongs people have done to us. And it never delights in evil, but rejoices in the truth, even when that truth might be in conflict with the perspective we've held, just like the Corinthians, just like the Star Sapphires. We're willing to be corrected by the truth when we're presented with the errors of our ways. Love protects. Love trusts and hopes and perseveres. Love is practical. Love is doing. You think the Green Lantern and the Star Sapphires are colorful? They're not nearly so colorful as Paul's description of love, or than love itself. Like the comics, love is action. It's not some dim, fleeting thing. It's not some precious thing that should be put on a high shelf, never to be used, and to dust it frequently, to try to preserve it, mint in the box. No. Love is action. And being loving is a choice, each and every moment of each and every day. And this can't be taken lightly. It's a choice to be polite, to be generous, to be slow to anger, putting the welfare of others before our own, thinking less of ourselves than we do of others. It takes tons of practice. We'll never be perfect at it in this life, but we still practice. It's worth the effort that we make. We have a great guide to follow in Jesus, who managed it all so very, very well. But we do it again and again, each and every day. Even when we make mistakes, we learn from them and get better at it, because love perseveres. Love builds community. This was a complete contrast to what the Corinthians had been up to, what many of us get up to when we're anxious and frustrated by events, whether local, regional, national, or international. We're going to go back to Carol Ferris one last time. In her final encounter, she meets up with an artificial intelligence named Aya, who took on human form, fell in love, and then was rejected. Hurt and angry, she pulls away from love, and she sets to seek out and destroy the Star Sapphires' home world of Zamaron, because as far as she is concerned, love is a destructive force. And she feels she's been left with nothing but pain. We all feel that sometimes, disappointed by love from other humans, feeling unloved in our isolation, but we're just going to put that away. We're not going to do that anymore. But don't give up. Don't let despair force us to push love away. Paul assures us that faith, hope, and love will endure. And the most powerful among them is love. Don't give that away. Don't give up on the most powerful of the forces. God's love remains with us always. God's love never fails, even when imperfect human love might. We can always lean on God's love and believe in God's love. And this will keep hope, belief, and patience alive. It's a never give up, never surrender sort of thing. To go with a science fiction quote, real love endures. Even when life gets rough, love perseveres. Paul assures us that love never fails. Let's look at one application of love. Just one today. Love refuses to dehumanize other human beings. We're seeing that happen now, this dehumanization, and it is incredibly dangerous because it leads to all sorts of atrocities against those who have been dehumanized, those whom we have chosen to withdraw love from. One way to do this is to see people as only valued by what they can offer up to society and to business and to the economy. How are you useful? And it's a deeply ingrained sort of thing. When you're going to a party, people ask, well, what do you do? And that's how they determine who you are. Well, we've got to watch out for that. So, some are suggesting that it's worth losing human lives to bolster the economy. My goodness. Slave owners used to talk about their slaves that way. In fact, slave owners sometimes treated slaves well because they thought of them in this way. And I'm quoting the slave owners when I say they considered enslaved people to be their money. Systems that dehumanize people, that would enslave them for profit, we call that sin. We declare that to be evil. We say that that must be resisted. And there are modern forms of slavery still rife in the world today. Early in the 20th century, glass companies retired glass blowers when they reached the age of 60 because their lungs no longer had the power to form the glass through blowing. And those who were retired in this way frequently died very quickly if they didn't have family to take them in, because they'd been living paycheck to paycheck. They had no safety net. They had no way to feed themselves once they were no longer making an income, once they'd been deemed less than useful to their company, when they were no longer profitable. When we view people with love, we see everyone as images of God, people of innate worth, people to be loved and who are loving. It's not an either-or choice, the economy or people's dying. That's not how this works. None of us are somebody else's money. We are humans. We deserve the respect of all of God's creation. We need to remind ourselves that love never fails. Love is a choice today and every day. It's complicated and it requires a lot of practice. We are loved. We need to love. We need to be loved. Love is an action. We best get about it. If you know anyone who needs to hear this message, share it on your Facebook pages so that others may get this message about love. Share it specifically with people you think really could benefit from hearing this today. Let's pause for a moment of silent reflection. Amen.